I want to talk about something kind of interesting tonight. It's something that I've watched and learned about, ever since, ooh, nice hair day, ever since I was a little kid. And we hear about this in church, and you hear about it in alternative media and things like that. And it's regarding like the New World Order. And there's people like David Icke, for instance, that come out and talk about this kind of thing. And they're like, oh, we've got to watch out for the New World Order. We got to make sure this doesn't slip in. We've got to keep our eyes out. We've got to be watching, Um, there's been this whole movement of, what was it, the 17th letter of the alphabet for the past several years. That's been trying to tell everybody to watch out for this, watch out for that. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. All right. There's always been organizations like that telling us those same exact kind of things. Always wanting us to look out for something else out there while we don't realize stuff is slipping in the back door right behind us. All right. That's how they do it. And it's like a game of three card monte or whatever. Watch the right hand while the left hand is kind of screwing you over, kind of thing. And I think it's best really to go back and look at history and look at what's happened, um, and go back to like the medieval times, for instance. Okay, even look at the beginning of the creation of the United States of America. It was first recognized in 1783 with the Treaty of Peace, through France and the King of France, where the King of France, within that Treaty of Peace, who he was like a third party, and the USA was supposedly fighting England, although we were getting money from France, and nothing could be resolved unless France took care of it. All right, so we had the treaty that was signed there in France, and the King of France, who happened to also be the King of England, named himself the Arch Treasurer and the Chief Elector. Okay, and that was 1783. But we have to go back a little bit in time, and a lot of people love the Magna Carta from 1215. But you go back to, I believe it was 1213. It was called the October 3rd Treaty, where King John was afraid he was going to go to hell or whatever, and so he signed over basically all right, title, and interest to everything to Pope the Innocent the Third. All right. So what does that mean? That means that moving forward, even though King John may have been called the Chief Elector or the Arch Treasurer, who really held that title? It would have been the Pope. It would have been the Vatican that held that title. Okay? But looking at the whole aspect of the whole New World Order, if we're looking at the medieval times and things that were going on back then, being the king was not a job that was very coveted, I don't think. At least I wouldn't have. Kings normally lasted either until they were killed or they themselves were shoved off somewhere and exiled. Okay? And normally it was death. That's what happened. I think a lot of people know the story of Caesar and the stabbing of Caesar. But that's the way things worked. Um, it was supposed to be a transgression through the family line. Most of them were patrilineal, where it would be a son that would come in. There was a few that were matrilineal, where maybe a son would come in through the matrilineal line, but it was mostly patrilineal. So it'd be one of the sons. And if for some reason people didn't like the son that was supposed to be coming in, then what they would do is there might be a revolt, a military revolt, and a military officer might come in and execute the king. Okay? This was a messy business. This was ugly. This was no fun. If you go back to, there was the year of 5 emperors. Okay? The year of 5 emperors, I believe it was 193 AD. And there was Niger, Sigerius, Ambrus, Septimus, and Pertinax, something like that. They were all emperors at that time. And boom, one will get whacked, another one will come in. One will get whacked, another one will come in. I mean, being emperor was ugly. And then there was emperors like Diocletian. Okay, Diocletian, and what we're really talking about is Europe and the Holy Roman Empire, which was the civilized world supposedly at the time. And Diocletian tried to break things up a little bit and have areas that were ruled by different entities. There was areas ruled strictly by the Senate. There was different tribes that ruled their own areas because these were multiple states. There was a lot of city-states at that time. There wasn't like the one city-state of Rome that we think of today. There was a lot of little city-states out there. Okay, and that was one of the biggest problems that a lot of people like the Mongols, for instance, had with taking over the Holy Roman Empire was all these little tribal communities. It's, and I've mentioned this before, the same problem that generals have talked about that they've had in the Middle East. Because you don't know who's the friend, you don't know who's the foe, you don't know whose side everybody's on because not necessarily everybody there in the Middle East is wearing, blue shirts or red shirts. You know what I mean? So it makes things really difficult. And this goes way back to, people that tried to conquer the Holy Roman Empire from the north or the east, like the Mongols. And so it was a battle, and it was tough for Europe to keep things going. And like I said, it wasn't fun being king. It was not a safe job. Even if you go up and look at like Russia with the Romanovs, it was not safe at all. That's an ugly story. And I'm in communication still with somebody from the Romanov family, but story for another day. What we have to really look at and pay attention when we're thinking about the New World Order. What is an order? An order might be a group of people, it might be a sect, it might be an organization, it might be an association. Order can also be like order like we think of, succession. 1, 2, 3, people standing in line, who's next? And that's kind of the way I see it with the New World Order. Because the United States of America was supposed to be the great experiment. And what was this great experiment? This great experiment was having the New World Order come in. And what was this New World Order? Well, it could have been the same order, some of the same sect and group or organizations of people. But instead of now them worrying about their nephew stabbing them or poisoning them, or a military ruler coming in and taking over in a revolt, now they were going to turn this over to the inhabitants. They were going to turn this over to the citizens. Let them feel like they had a hand in the process. See what's happening? And guess what? You're still going to be bringing in the same person that the order probably would have brought in, or somebody from the order. If you do the research, you find, and it's been done, that the presidents are all pretty much related. In fact, not only are the presidents related, Cheney and Bush and one other I know related to Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was born from England, of course. Boris Johnson was born in New York. They're also related to Winston Churchill. The Bushes are related to Winston Churchill. And this is all one big family game. People don't realize this. And so, really, the whole New World Order was a new way of taking care of rulership, because they didn't want to have to worry about getting their throats slit by each other anymore. Instead, they wanted to turn it over to the citizens and let them do it. At the same time, I want to remind people, when they're looking at information, looking at people researching things online, we need to realize that they really set things up in 3 basic categories, okay? One, you've got mainstream media, okay, with the regular narrative. Then you've got alternative media. And then in alternative media, you've got another step where you've got green aliens coming from other planets that are to come save everybody. And so I really think the idea is that when people will go in and start looking at alternative media, looking at other resource information, they run into this information about these aliens coming from other planets that are all going to come and save us and beam us up, Scotty. And it freaks them out. And what does it do? It makes them run right back to the original narrative, mainstream media. So we have to kind of watch out, keep our eye out for that kind of stuff. Yeah, you might keep it in the back of your mind and say, could be some possibilities here, but it's not something I would necessarily bank on. And yeah, I want to mention something else as well. Talking about like the medieval times and the different emperors of the Holy Roman Empire, how this really pertains to the U.S., because I think a lot of people will stop and think, okay, what does the Holy Roman Empire really have to do with the United States of America? Well, let's take the Carolinas, for instance, North and South Carolina. Do people really know where that came from? That really came from the Carolingian dynasty. That came from Charlemagne. Charlemagne was called Charles the Great. Charles the Great, that was King Charlemagne, or Emperor Charlemagne. He ruled from 800 to 814. And it was his lineage with the Carolingian dynasty that came to the USA. That's how Carolinas were established. When people landed here on the Mayflower, it's not like they came to a brand new land. It's not like they came to an undiscovered land. There was already cities here. Jacksonville, Florida had existed for a long time. There was many towns up and down the East Coast, Seaward, was already there. These places were established. How could they have already been established if, as we were taught, everybody first came on the Mayflower? Yeah, maybe that gives us a pause to stop and start thinking and doing our own research and saying, hey, is everything that's been told to us true? Well, yeah. Chances are very good no. Good night, everybody.